Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to be doing this video for you today. If you are new, please subscribe, it will mean the world. If you are coming back again, thank you for returning, it means the world. Your comments will mean the world to me. Oh, I just love this channel so much. So today's video is actually going to be a two-parter, just simply because I love going very in-depth, and the story we're going to be talking about today is extremely detailed, obviously because she was very public, so there's a lot of information. But today's video is going to be, well, this two-part mini-series is going to be on Princess Diana, well, mainly, and her relationship with Prince Charles, now King Charles, and her subsequent passing away and all of the theories that surround that. So in this video we are going to be talking about her childhood, everything leading up to her relationship with Charles, when they first got engaged, married, their honeymoon. It's gonna be all of that stuff. It is very interesting, and I know the second video probably will be more to other people's interest, but I would say definitely you need to watch this one before you watch the second one. My second part to this will be up on Sunday. I do upload now every Wednesdays and Sundays, so that's very exciting. But I am really excited to do this video. I've had an obsession with Princess Diana for years. I remember when I was like about 6 years old, my mum took me to the exhibit in London, and I have printed out everything and have it all in an album. I've just always been obsessed with her, and I feel like many people are. I thought I knew everything, but there is a lot that I found out in my research and I'm really intrigued. So we're going to start with childhood. Diana Frances Spencer was born on July 1st, 1961. She was born into one of Great Britain's oldest and most important families. She grew up at Park House near Sandringham, Norfolk, and she was the youngest daughter of then Viscount and Viscountess Althorp, now the late Earl Spencer and Honorary Mrs. Shand Kyde. I'm not sure how to say that, but anyway. That is their official names. They come from a very rich family. They're a very high up family. They're on par with the royal family, sort of. Not really, but anyway. So Diana's parents' actual names, to make this a bit easier for you, were Edward John Spencer, better known as Johnny, and Frances Roche. Diana had two older sisters, Lady Sarah and Lady Jane. Now their surnames are Sarah McCordledale and Jane's is Fellows, and Sarah was born in 1955 and Jane was born in 1957. However, after they had those two older girls, the parents desperately wanted a son to carry on the Spencer family name and responsibilities, as especially back in those days it was the men that carry it on. After they unfortunately lost one child, sadly he died right after birth, and that was a little boy. However, Frances did get pregnant again. The Spencers were so eager to have a son, they just thought they were having a son. They didn't even bother to think about girls' names, but sure enough, on July 1st, 1961, they gave birth to yet another girl, who they named Diana Frances Spencer. They did eventually get the son they longed for, but Diana felt unwanted. Though she knew her parents loved her, she knew that they were just disappointed that she wasn't a boy. The son that they had after Diana is also called Charles, which is really inconvenient because it's very confusing, but she has a little brother called Charles Spencer. Not Prince Charles, obviously. Diana, at 3 years old, was described as quite a lovable child and very cuddly. To discuss their royal ties a little bit, her family was living on the Queen's estate at Sandringham, where her father had rented Park House. And Diana's father, he had actually been a royal equerry, I'm not sure how to say that, for both King George, and when Queen Elizabeth II was younger, so Queen Elizabeth and her dad, so very important and very tied to them. And the Queen had actually been the main guest when Diana's parents got married in 1954. To give you an idea of how important the family was, the ceremony was at Westminster Abbey and it was called the social event of the year. While Diana wasn't officially a member of the British aristocracy, her childhood was spent surrounded with them. According to the biography, the Diana Chronicles, Queen Elizabeth II was her brother's godmother, crazy, and she was also known to have tea parties with Prince Andrew. Diana was even given the nickname Dutch as a child because she always acted like a duchess. Mary Clark, who was a nanny of Princess Diana, wrote a biography about the princess's childhood called Little Girl Lost, The Troubled Childhood of Princess Diana by the Woman Who Raised Her. While the book title describes Diana's childhood as troubled, Mary did explain that for the most part she was a happy child, saying, quote, "Diana had a happy, secure childhood. From the moment I met her and worked with the family, I saw she was helpful, laughing, exuberant, loved by both her parents and the apple of her father's eye. Diana would play with her brother Charles, who she was very, very close to, and she would go to bed strictly at 8 p.m. every night." However, as Diana's childhood went on, it did become full of unhappiness and conflict. Her older sisters were always away at boarding school and her parents were very preoccupied as well. The task of raising Diana and her brother Charles was often left to nannies, maids and tutors. The relationship between the Spencer parents had been crumbling since the loss of their child, that little boy before Diana. So in 1968 they had decided to divorce when Diana was only 6 years old. She would always remember the crunch of her mother's departing footsteps on the gravel drive. The children became pawns in a bitter custody dispute. So I actually was a bit confused here. I think Diana's mum met someone else and left their father. But it was honestly very different. To all different sources said different. Anyway, Johnny, their father, was given full custody of the children and both parents eventually got remarried later in life. And I also don't know why he got full custody. Very confusing. I tried to find it out. It was a bit annoying that I couldn't. Discussing her education. After the divorce, Diana, aged 9, in 1970, left her local school and she was sent to Riddlesworth Hall, an all-girls boarding school, as these upper class families often do send their kids to boarding school. There she made some lovely friends and developed a reputation as the kind girl who loved to help others. Diana really liked animals as well, winning prizes in school for being the best person to take care of her pet guinea pig. One thing she did not like was school itself, the learning. She was frustrated by her studies, only truly enjoying music and art class. Unlike her academics, Diana shined in athletics. She played tennis, netball, field hockey and especially loved swimming and diving. However, dancing was her favourite, and when she was younger she actually wanted to grow up to be a ballerina. Although at first quite unhappy at the school, Diana later settled into life at Riddlesworth Hall. She became a popular pupil while dealing with the aftermath of her family breakup. She very quickly settled in the school, not only becoming popular with the staff but also the other girls. The great thing about her was that she was always taking care of the little ones or any person that seemed upset or sad. The new ones who came in and were homesick, she would take care of them. She was always very popular in that way. Even at this young age you can tell what an amazing person Diana is. At the age of 13, Diana's life changed drastically. Her 83-year-old grandfather passed away. Upon his death, Diana's father became the 8th Earl of Spencer and inherited his estate of Althropin, Northamptonshire. Diana also received a title, becoming Lady Diana Spencer, which you all probably know her better as. Her family, well, not her mum, but her family moved to the estate and changed her schools again to West Heath in Sevenoaks, Kent, which is really, really close to me. This boarding school was not really much better than the last one. She just did not like school. Diana mainly found interesting the required volunteer work. She cared for and helped the elderly, and she attended charity events for the disabled. She always felt a great amount of accomplishment when helping others. Her former history teacher remembers her as being fun-loving and a deeply sensitive girl. It was here in this school that Diana actually did sit her O-levels twice and failed them all twice. So she had no qualifications, and she actually even described herself as thick as a plank once, which I find really sad because I've never been very academic either, and it actually is very sad at that age. She left West Heath at the end of 1976, and in 1977, at age 16, Diana's family enrolled her in finishing school at Institute Alpin Vidamanetti in Switzerland. I didn't actually know what a finishing school was, so I'm going to tell you. They are educational institutions that teach young individuals social courtesy and upper class cultural traditions to prepare them for their future and adult life. Traditionally, the high class and rich people used to send their daughters to these schools to prepare them for married life. So this is literally the most upper class thing I've ever heard. And I'm pretty sure Switzerland is the most expensive school in the world. Diana lived in Switzerland for 2 school years, and she also did return every year for her winter holidays. She did not enjoy this school either. Diana was one of the only English-speaking students there. Most of them would speak French. She just hated the school. Moving on to her young adulthood, at age 18, Diana's family bought her own flat at Coleherne Court in South Kensington in London, a very expensive area. She lived with her 3 other friends, Caroline, Anne and Virginia. She remembered these days as some of the best of her life. The girls would party, laugh together, and her life was just a very normal for being age 18, besides the fact she got bought a flat in Kensington, but you know what I mean. Eventually, even though that she didn't need the money, Diana wanted to get a job. I found so sweet. She frequently worked as a housekeeper for close friends, and she would babysit small children, as she absolutely adored children. She would also occasionally cook. In 1978, Diana worked for 3 months as a nanny for Philippa and Jeremy Whittaker in their Hampshire residence. Also, Mary Robertson employed Diana for several months as a babysitter to her infant son Patrick during 1980. However, she was very excited when her sister told her about a teacher's assistant job opening at a kindergarten school. There at Young England Kindergarten in Pimlico, she really discovered her talent and love for working with children. As a teenager, Princess Diana didn't have any serious ambitions to marry Prince Charles, but she did harbour a big teen crush on him. As a teenager at boarding school, Diana would allegedly tell her friends that she wanted to be a dancer of Princess of Wales. Diana's cousin also said in a documentary that Diana had liked Charles from afar ever since she was 14 or 15 years old, saying, quote, "We all used to have pictures of various pop stars that we liked. The Monkees, Rod Stewart, people like that. I can tell you that she used to have photographs of Prince Charles around her bed at West Heath." With Diana, it was always pictures of Prince Charles. She had a schoolgirl crush on him for a very long time. Please keep in mind, he's around like 10 years older than her, but when that isn't that weird because lots, like her cousin said, lots of girls do have crushes on older singers, don't they? Fair enough. When Prince Charles and Diana met, he was actually dating Diana's sister. I did already know this, but it is just so weird. And it was the sister, Lady Sarah Spencer. This relationship, however, was quite brief as she realised she didn't love him. Charles and Diana met at Althorpe, Diana's family home, whilst grouse hunting. I have no idea what that is, but it's probably something very, very upper class. At the time, Diana was just 16 years old, while Prince Charles was 28. I know. During their engagement interview 4 years later, the prince would recall his first impression of Diana, saying, quote, "I remember thinking what a very jolly and amusing and attractive 16-year-old she was. I mean, great fun and bouncy and full of life and everything." Do you know what? That would be a really cute thing to say, a 28-year-old seeing a 16-year-old. if he didn't say attractive. If it was just like jolly and bouncy, that's fine. Attractive. So you're 28 and you remember thinking, yeah, that 16-year-old bit of me. Bin her sister off, I want the 16-year-old. So weird. While the two met in 1977, they wouldn't begin dating until 1980 after reconnecting at a mutual friend's home. Diana said, quote, he'd just broken up with his girlfriend and his friend had just been killed. I said it would be nice to see him. We were talking about his friend that got killed and his girlfriend, and I said, quote, you must be so lonely. It's pathetic watching you walking up the aisle with a coffin in front. Ghastly. You need someone beside you. Whereupon he leapt upon me and started kissing me, and I thought, ugh, this is not what people do. And he was all over me for the rest of the evening, following me around like a puppy, which really made me laugh. Like, she was not expecting him to be like that. Diana also revealed how hard those early days of dating a prince were, saying, quote, he wasn't very consistent with his courting abilities. He'd ring me every day for a week, then wouldn't speak to me for 3 weeks. Very odd. I thought, fine, well, he knows where I am if he wants me. The thrill when he used to ring up was so immense and intense, it would drive the other 3 girls in my flat crazy. I found it really, really cute. Keen to spend more time with Diana, Charles promptly invited her to Balmoral in September 1980 to join him and a group of friends staying there for a summer holiday. The friends that were there thought Diana seemed to be the perfect girl. She was funny, fun, everyone seemed to love her, and she made everyone laugh and seemed to adore Charles. Diana was this girl who appeared to be absolutely lovely, perfect marriage material, and she appeared to be very uncomplicated. She was fresh and naive and full of the joys of life, or so it seemed. Pressure began to mount on Charles and Diana almost immediately. Now we are going to talk about the early press interest, and this is going to be even more of a factor in episode 2. Part 2, but it's just so weird reading how straight away the press are just awful. Anyway, ever since Charles was around the age of 18, the press had been looking at every girlfriend and asking, could this be our next queen? They delved into the background for all of these women, which obviously put an awful lot of them off. It would me as well. It was very difficult for Charles to meet and get to know somebody, and this is exactly what happened with Diana. She literally met Charles and immediately the press discovered that he was seeing her. The paparazzi literally camped outside the door of her flat in London. Everywhere she went, she was photographed and harassed, and it was impossible for the two of them to get to know one another in a normal way. Charles was also under the pressure of his father, Prince Philip, to stop playing the field and get married. It was time for Charles, who was now in his 30s, to settle down and find a wife, his father thought. The couple reportedly dated mostly through phone calls in the early days, with sources saying that they only met 13 times before Charles proposed to her. And most of the time that they had spent together, they weren't alone, so they literally did not know each other well at all. In that, also, they are said to have dated for around 6 months until Charles went down on one knee at Windsor Castle and proposed to Diana on February 3rd, 1981. Diana said, quote, I remember thinking this is a joke, and I just said, yeah, okay, and laughed. He was deadly serious. However, while Diana was elated by the engagement, Prince Charles did not show the same level of enthusiasm. Diana said, quote, in my immaturity, which was enormous, I thought that he was very much in love with me, which he was. He sort of had the besotted look about him looking back at it, but it wasn't the genuine sort. They made an official announcement via the Lord Chancellor at 11 AM on February 24th, 1981. This statement said, it is with greatest pleasure that the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh announce the betrothal of their beloved son, the Prince of Wales, to the Lady Diana Spencer, daughter of the Earl Spencer and the Honourable Mrs. Shand Kidd. I find it funny that he mentioned her parents. Like, they never usually do that, but obviously because her parents were very... She literally had an earl as a dad. During the announcement and the photos taken, the future princess wore an off-the-rack blue suit from Harrods. She showed off her stunning sapphire engagement ring. She picked the legendary accessories from Garrard, the Crown Jeweller's catalogue. A choice that was actually quite scandalous among the royal family, but she looked gorgeous. We're going to be talking about the infamous engagement interview. This is a crazy one. The newly engaged couple gave a TV interview shortly after they announced their engagement publicly. The overall vibe was pretty awkward. Keep in mind, Charles was 32 years old. 32? And Diana was just 19. They both looked like different varieties of deer in headlights as the interviewer prodded them for details on their hasty engagement. But the worst moment by far comes right at the end. The interviewer asks if they can find the words to sum up how they're feeling. Charles said, quote, "Just delighted and happy," looking over at Diana. "I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on." Then the interviewer, clearly hoping for something a little bit more, you know, interesting, prompts him, saying, "And I suppose in love?" Diana responds quickly, "Of course," after which Charles says, "Whatever in love means." It is the most awkward clip. I mean, just surely you just say yeah. Although Diana does laugh this off in the moment, I mean, what else can she do? She revealed years later that the comment upset her deeply, saying, quote, "We had this ghastly TV interview the day we announced our engagement. This ridiculous reporter said, 'Are you in love?' I thought, what a thick question, so I said, 'Yes, of course we are.' And Charles turned round and said, 'Whatever love means.' And that threw me completely. I thought, what a strange answer. God, absolutely traumatised me. Oh, I just love Diana. Sorry, I know I keep saying it, but I do. For her first appearance as a royal fiancée in March 1981, Lady Diana joined Prince Charles at London's Goldsmith Hall. She wore a strapless black dress by Emmanuel, a fashion choice that led to a serious scrutiny by the press. It's just crazy, like, it's really hardly anything scandalous. The night was later described by Diana as a horrendous occasion, as at this time she obviously wasn't very well versed in royal protocol, and one of the event's attendees, the Princess Grace of Monaco, reportedly pulled the future princess over to the side and literally said to Diana, quote, "Don't worry, it will get a lot worse." I mean, this could have been in a complete bitchy way or a way like, "Oh, I understand what you're going through, it's awful." But I don't really know. After their engagement announcement, Princess Diana accompanied her fiancé to Buckingham Palace to see her future mother-in-law, Queen Elizabeth II. In March 1981, Diana joined her fiancé and senior members of the royal family, including the Queen Mother, for a day at the horse race in Sandown Park in 1981. While Diana was incredibly personable when meeting the public, she was rather shy around the photographers and the press. She earned the title of Shy Di. Wedding date approaching, Prince Charles and Diana enjoyed a weekend retreat at the Queen's Balmoral estate in Scotland in May 1981. Diana's issues arose quite early on. She soon began to struggle in her new role. Aged just 19 and having been living with 3 girls and in a flat, and just literally moved into a suite in Buckingham Palace. I mean, that is quite the jump. It was awful for her and lonely. As soon as she moved into Buckingham Palace, she appeared to be a very different girl from how she'd been seen before. She suddenly became very weepy and jealous of anywhere Charles went and anyone he saw. Her moods went up and down. Shooting to stardom in a very short space of time was just way too much for her. Meanwhile, Charles, who was on a perpetual rollercoaster of engagements that he couldn't get off of, didn't quite know how to cope with this. He didn't really know what was going on, which breaks my heart. And I'm not actually sure. I did read she did move into the suite of Buckingham, a suite in Buckingham Palace, but it was either she went there first then went to this next place, or she just was in this next place. But it's also said that Diana lived in Clarence House throughout her engagement to Prince Charles. The bright stucco-faced building was built in 1873 and has been home to many royals, and I'm not joking, it's currently the house to Prince Charles, well, King Charles and Camilla. We haven't mentioned Camilla yet, but we will be. Now we're gonna go on to the wedding rehearsal. Leading up, just before the wedding, they had a wedding rehearsal. After an hour-long rehearsal at the venue of St Paul's Cathedral in London, the couple danced at a gala ball hosted by Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace. This all was 2 nights before their wedding. This was also along with 1,400 family members and guests in attendance, including Nancy Reagan. A dinner for 90 followed, after which the group parted ways. The country's largest fireworks display in more than 2 centuries was also held on the eve of the wedding, drawing hundreds of thousands of people into Hyde Park, including Prince Charles, who was on hand to light the first bonfire. Diana did not join these celebrations. She instead spent the night at Clarence House with her sisters and bridal party in order to get up for her 6:30 AM wedding day call. According to journalist Penny Junor's book, The Duchess, The Untold Story, her future husband Charles sent her a gift from Buckingham Palace, a signet ring bearing his Prince of Wales feathers, along with a sweet note that read, quote, "I am so proud of you, and when you come up, I'll be there at the altar for you tomorrow. Just look 'em in the eyes and knock 'em dead." Which is actually really sweet, and this is why this man, well, our now king, he really confuffles me. However, it is also said that the royal also had an unpleasant confession for his bride-to-be. Someone said, I'm not sure who, but quote, "One of the most shocking things that Diana told me was that the night before the wedding, Charles told her that he didn't love her." I think Charles didn't want to go into the wedding on a false premise. He wanted to square it with her, and it was devastating for Diana, which is just absolutely heartbreaking. Diana was actually thinking of calling the wedding off, calling the engagement off, but Diana's sister said, like, you can't, it's too late, basically. That would be mortifying, like, for everyone involved. On to the wedding. Prince Charles and Princess Diana's wedding on July 29th, 1981 was named as the wedding of the century, and for very good reason. The lavish affair, which took place at St Paul's Cathedral in London, cost roughly 48 million, which is around 156 million today. The nuptials were watched by a record-breaking 750 million people in 74 countries around the world. It also marked the first time that a British citizen married an heir to the throne in 300 years, which I didn't know. Their extravagant wedding was seemingly a dream come true for the bride. Diana said later, quote, "I remember being so in love with my husband that I couldn't take my eyes off him. I just absolutely thought I was the luckiest girl in the world. He was going to look after me. It was heaven, amazing, wonderful. Though I was so nervous when I was walking up the aisle that I swore my knees would knock and make a noise." Charles was also full of optimism, reportedly writing in a letter to a friend, quote, "There were several times where I was close to crying from the sheer joy of it all." Because I just love their wedding so much, I'm going to discuss it a little bit. So the pair's venue choice of St Paul's Cathedral marked the first royal affair to be held there since 1501. In addition to its enormous seating holding 3,500 wedding guests compared to Westminster Abbey's 2,000, according to Charles, the cathedral was chosen in part for its spectacular acoustics, which he felt would provide guests with a stirring, dramatic and noisy sound, because usually royal weddings are at Westminster Abbey. Beyond that, he also is said to have reasoned that it had room for an orchestra, a world famous choir, and was more beautiful than Westminster Abbey, which I agree actually. Among the 3,500 people who attended the pair's nuptials there were many world leaders, including Princess Grace Kelly of Monaco, Nancy Reagan, Prime Minister at the time Margaret Thatcher, the Prince's parents, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, obviously, and just all of their family. Also in attendance was Prince Charles' current wife, Camilla Parker Bowles, though she was not invited to the couple's more intimate wedding breakfast, which I would hope. And Diana actually said later on that when she was at her own wedding, she looked out for Camilla. Why was Camilla invited? Absent from the service were several family members that were cut from a list of people Diana's father, John Spencer, requested seats for. Diana apparently decided to cross out all the names of the people that decided not to come to her sister's weddings, which I love that, because it's like, oh, they're obviously going to want to come to a royal wedding, aren't they? But they didn't bother coming to her sister's wedding, so I think that's so sweet, I'm not gonna lie. Princess Diana's gown, which I've actually seen in the exhibition and it's incredible, was crafted in the space of 3 months, was made with ivory silk taffeta that was dyed and woven ivory instead of pure white, and decorated with ornate hand embroidery with no less than 10,000 micro pearls. Though its massive 25-foot long train was undoubtedly its defining feature, it also featured puffy sleeves, a ruffled necklace and gorgeous lace trim, which came from a bag of scraps that was acquired by designers at auction. As it turned out, the scraps also turned out to be of royal history, as an expert noticed antique lace that had come from the bodice of a dress from the reign of Queen Mary, Prince Charles' great-grandmother. Designer Elizabeth Emanuel said, quote, "It was all about drama and making Diana a fairy tale princess. The gown was typical of early 80s style, overblown, romantic, flouncy, but we had to get it right because we knew it would go down in history," which, wow, it truly did. I don't think any royal has done a dress like this before or since. Diana's Something New featured several special details that couldn't be seen by the naked eye, including a blue bow inside of the bodice, that was her something blue, and a tiny gold horseshoe that was sewn in for good luck. And designers only told Diana on her wedding day. She didn't know that this horseshoe was in there, and she was very touched as she was very traditional. For her something borrowed, Princess Diana had her pick of options, as Queen Elizabeth II offered to lend her the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot tiara that has since been worn by Kate Middleton. But what I love is Diana ultimately decided to wear her own family's Spencer tiara, which was worn by her sisters for their weddings, as well as her former sister-in-law who married Diana's brother. Unfortunately for Diana, it caused her a bit of a pain. Her brother revealed he just remembered she had a cracking headache because she obviously wasn't used to wearing a tiara all morning. Her brother Charles Spencer is now the current owner of the tiara. The royal couple's wedding party was made up of 2 page boys, Lord Nicholas Windsor and Edward Van Cutsum, and 5 bridesmaids, including Diana's niece, Lady Sarah Armstrong Jones, now Chatto, Diana's favourite former student, Clementine Hambro, Charles' goddaughter, India Hicks, Catherine Cameron and Sarah Jane Gaisley. Each of them had been chosen for personal reasons by the bride and groom. The bridal attendants dressed in outfits similar to Diana's, with taffeta satin, lace trim and yellow sashes. Clementine Hambro was then at age 5 and Cameron age 6 were the youngest of the group, and also wore flower crowns to match their bouquets. At one point, Clementine, who was actually the great-granddaughter of Winston Churchill, so many ties, isn't there, had a misstep, falling and bursting into tears. Diana asked her if, quote, she'd bumped her bottom, to which she replied, "No, I bumped my head," which I just think is so cute. I love Diana. Diana walked down the aisle on the arm of her father, despite the unsteadiness he faced from a stroke he'd suffered 3 years prior. Diana actually broke from tradition when she decided to leave the word obey out of her vows to Prince Charles from the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, which dates back to 1662. She chose to follow the new ritual of the Church of England, and she promised to only, quote, love him, comfort him, honour and keep him in sickness and health, because it usually says obey, which is a little bit but wow, she was such a woman ahead of her time, wasn't she? Despite their careful planning, the vow recital didn't exactly go right. Diana accidentally referred to Prince Charles, whose full name is Prince Charles Philip Arthur George, as Prince Philip Charles. I love that, it makes me laugh. Charles mistakenly offered Diana thy goods instead of the more traditional my worldly goods, which it's just a bit like, oh, did you do that on purpose? I think he did. The couple honoured a then 58-year-long tradition when Prince Charles presented his bride with a Welsh gold ring from the Clogau St David's Mine, a practice that was started by the Queen Mother in her marriage to King George. After exchanging their vows, the couple was taken back to the Buckingham Palace by way of a state landau carriage that dated back to 1902, which was first used by King Edward during his coronation procession throughout London. And this same carriage actually later would transport Prince William and Kate Middleton from their wedding venue. 600,000 spectators lined the streets of London to catch a glimpse of them as they passed by. In addition to their verbal issues they both made during the ceremony, the groom forgot to kiss his bride following their vow exchange. I don't know how you can forget to do that, but okay. Anyway, to make up for it, the royal couple gave the people a show by sharing a very public kiss on the balcony of the Buckingham Palace. And this is actually a tradition that would later be followed by their son Prince William and his wife Kate Middleton, which I actually find really, really sweet. Before the couple jetted off on their honeymoon, they celebrated with a far smaller group of loved ones. Just 120 of the 3,500 guests were invited to the gathering at Buckingham Palace. There they were treated to an epic feast that included such lavish dishes such as brill in lobster sauce and supreme de volaille princesse de Galles. I'm really sorry, that is such bad pronunciation. Which was a plate on a chicken breast stuffed with lamb mousse, wrapped in brioche and topped off with Madeira sauce and asparagus tips. And this was actually named for Diana herself, who loved chicken, which I found really random and funny. Just loved chicken. They had a whopping 27 wedding cakes for guests to enjoy at their intimate breakfast ceremony, with the main cake measuring a towering 5 feet high and bearing the coat of arms of both bride and groom, along with their initials and sprinkling of roses and lilies and orchids. And it weighed 200 pounds. Their first dance song is actually unknown, but they reportedly enjoyed music from jazz and pop band leader Lester Lanin, so they had him to kick off their wedding reception. Following the excitement, Diana shared a sweet moment with her nearest and dearest. As soon as the cake had been cut, Diana, her sisters and the younger bridesmaids disappeared upstairs to help her change into her pink going away outfit. The mood was apparently very girly and giggly, because obviously she can't really get out of that huge wedding dress into her going away outfit on her own. Moving on to their honeymoon. From there, she said goodbye to the rest of her guests and climbed into an open carriage which Prince Charles's brothers Prince Andrew and Prince Edward had decorated with a just married sign. The royal pair then set off for Gibraltar on Spain's south coast, where they boarded the Royal Britannia. Sorry, I had to. The yacht cruised around the Mediterranean, including the Greek islands, for 14 days. The couple ended their getaway at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. It was a very luxurious itinerary. Now, things went downhill almost instantly. Charles told a friend that their first night was nothing special, saying, quote, "It was pleasant enough, of course, but she really was painfully naive." And according to sources, Charles had enjoyed women who led him, mastered him and mothered him. He was used to being served, not required to seduce. Obviously, Charles and Diana's 12-year age gap had always been known, but it became very apparent on this honeymoon. Charles envisioned spending his honeymoon sunning, swimming, reading, painting and writing thank you letters. He'd taken along his watercolours, some canvases and a pile of books which he'd hoped that he and Diana would read together and then discuss together in the evenings. Diana, however, was no great reader. She hated his books and was offended that he would rather sit and read than actually talk to her. She resented him sitting for hours at his easel too, and they had many blazing rows. One day when Charles was painting on the deck of the Britannia, he went off to look at something for half an hour. He came back to find she destroyed his painting and all of his materials, which is like, that's a little bit far, but then I don't blame her. He obviously just didn't love her and she knew that. Diana later said, quote, "Tremendous hope was slashed by day 2, which is just so sad. You literally, I mean, they didn't even know each other really, did they? And this being together this much on their honeymoon, they're getting to know each other, but they're married now, it's a bit late." Also, Princess Diana had been struggling with bulimia for months by the time that their honeymoon came around. And Diana actually later said, quote, "During our engagement, my husband put his hand on my waistline and said, 'Oh, a bit chubby here, aren't we?' And that triggered off something in me." And the Camilla thing, we'll talk about that in a sec. I was desperate. I remember the first time I made myself sick. I was so thrilled because I thought this was a release of tension. Oh, it breaks my heart. And her disorder only got worse when she was on the boat on their honeymoon. We now need to discuss Camilla Parker Bowles. Yes, the current Queen Consort and wife of Prince Charles now, or the Wicked Witch of the West, I like to call her. No, I'm joking. we're going to quickly dip into them a sec. So Prince Charles and Camilla are thought to have met for the first time at a polo match in London in 1970. Having bonded over a shared love of polo and countryside pursuits, they dated for around 2 years, before Prince Charles left to join the Navy and Camilla rekindled her romance with Mr. Parker Bowles, marrying him a year later in 1973. However, you might think, yeah, that's over, that relationship was over. Now, no, obviously not. Anyway, there is a lot of times that Charles proves he still loves Camilla, ending with him literally marrying her. And personally, it's unclear to me if he ever did authentically love Diana. In my opinion, in his head, he couldn't marry Camilla. She'd got married now. She's gone, like she's taken. And I feel like maybe he was getting the pressure from his father, Prince Philip, to just marry, and he thought, oh, well, Diana's my best bet. Which is really sad. And Prince Charles and Camilla stayed very in touch. Very in touch. Like I said, Camilla even went to their wedding. Now we're going back to the events of Charles and Diana's honeymoon. Although Camilla had already been married to her first husband for 8 years, so she was well and truly into a long marriage, Charles still found a way to call her from the Mediterranean. His valet Stephen Barry said in the book The Diana Chronicles, quote, "The prince simply had to be in constant contact with Camilla or he couldn't function properly. If he went without his daily phone call, he would become tetchy and ill-tempered," which is just crazy. Oh my god. And apparently Camilla wasn't happy in her own marriage either, so she would return these advances, if you can call it that, because her husband at the time was actually having extramarital affairs. Now, as if calling Camilla wasn't bad enough, Charles also received a gift from her. Diana later said on the Channel 4 tapes, quote, "On our honeymoon, cufflinks arrive on his wrists. 2 C's entwined like the Chanel C's. So I said, 'Camilla gave you those, didn't she?' He said, 'Yes, so what's wrong? They're a present from a friend.' And boy, did we have a row. Jealousy, total jealousy. And it was such a good idea, the 2 C's, but it wasn't that clever. So after their honeymoon, on their return, they resided at Kensington Palace, a royal residence in the Kensington Gardens in London. The couple lived in apartments 8 and 9. And this is where we are going to wrap this video up. Obviously, we need to talk in the next video about from their return. They very quickly had Prince William together and Prince Harry. We need to talk about both of their affairs, their divorce, Diana's exit and outbreak into the world, and subsequently then her tragic and very suspicious death. So be ready for that video. This was kind of like the prep video for it, but I also really enjoyed filming this because I am obsessed with Princess Diana. I could have made this video so much longer, which is actually crazy. I really, 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 really hope you enjoyed. It means the world to me. If you could comment anything, it would just be great. I really appreciate every single thing you guys do for me. Subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting.